Hello, another episode of Catch Up to Contenders, this time doing North America. And yes, there has been a delay, there has been a gap. I have not stuck to my schedule that I said I would because I've been ill. Fuck you. Stop making me live to your schedule. Get out of my fucking face. All right. So if we want to, we're gonna, and apologies if I cough during this, but I'm joined by the ever knowledgeable ZP, who has been in Overwatch forever, it seems, and Elk as well, support player for Fusion University, who messaged me just after they beat Toronto Esports in a reverse sweep and said, "Thank God we won. Now it will be awkward when I come on the podcast."
Yeah, that was exciting.
Exciting, is that how you put it? That was absolute
That was
nail biter.
terrifying. We're watching that as that's going on. I was like, wait, what is actually happening? Oh my god. And then you guys at the last minute was like, oh, actually, we know how to play Overwatch. It's fine.
Yeah, if you actually watch the maps, like we full held map 3, we full held map 4, we 2-0'd them on the Koth on map 5. Like as soon as we figured out how to adjust our playstyle, which still props to Beast, Halo, and Zachary for figuring out like what they needed to change in the front line, it was a lot easier for us to approach it.
Okay, so I think the way that I've done these previously is that I've kind of like started at the beginning, who were these teams, how have the groups played out. But because we're in the middle of the middle of the playoffs actually, we've just seen all of the quarterfinals come to a close. It makes sense, I think, to begin with. This is a new patch for the playoffs. You guys have had to adapt as well. It seems to have shaken up the game a lot. So the meta would be a good place to begin with, because we've got like a literal brand new hero being plugged into the game. But if we rewind time a little bit to kind of set expectations, what was North America playing a lot of when the group stage? All right, I'm an absolute moron and somehow managed to crash Discord and reset things. So there you go. There's a little jump cut for you. First time I've ever had to edit a video that I've ever uploaded, actually. So what a ball ache. All right, so what we were just about to discuss was what was the meta in the group stage, so that we can have a kind of a ground level to talk about how it changed going into the playoffs.
Okay, so you have like your two flavors, right? You have the flavor which was not all that dissimilar from OWL, that you had a lot of double snipers being played. Junkertown essentially leaked over the entire meta, as it did throughout all of Overwatch. And then the other part, which was kind of the Contendee special, which also leaked into OWL. So like one leaked into the other was the infamous Goats comp, where a lot of teams, it didn't really matter what the situation, what the play is at. Are we getting crushed on a map? We better do the 3 support, 3 tank, and just run into the other team to mixed results. You'd also get far quite a bit against those sort of setups, but that's kind of the baseline compositions you're seeing pretty often.
That's pretty similar as well with a lot of the other contenders regions as well. And I think in general, what I like about North America is that it has a blend of different play styles. Korea tends to go pretty ham on dive compositions, although they have done that less recently because the Go comp has been powerful, and presumably they'll be incorporating Hammond in and stuff like that. And then Europe just always loves playing tanks no matter what. It doesn't matter like what the fuck the meta is or whether it's good or not. They just seem to play tanks. But
there's a reason for that, by the way. Just to be clear, and going down history, it's that I firmly believe that NIP permanently traumatized that region in late 2016. That was when NIP was at peak, right before DreamHack, and they're just running triple tank, and just all of EU is getting creamed by tanks, and it just like permanently imprinted itself on the psyche of Europeans everywhere.
I've actually got a different theory, right? Which is what the players were telling me, is that particularly in the last season of Contenders, they got triggered by you repeatedly saying tank comps are shit, tank comps are shit, and so they decided it's CP's fault, and they decided that if whatever team it was that made it to that show match where they were playing against North America, they already had like an agreement between Hurricanes and Giganti, where they were like, fuck it, we're running quad tank, it doesn't matter who the hell like we end up facing or who gets through, we're running quad tank and we're gonna shit on them.
So to be clear, I'm the reason that Hurricane was basically tainted by the tank comps, relied on it too much, and they ended up getting relegated. It's all because they overreacted to my shit talk about not liking quad tank, that I have ruined an entire region and destroyed a team.
Yes, it is all your fault.
All right. I can accept that. That's fine.
I await to see what kind of devastation you'll unleash on North America when it lasts long enough. All right, so
Hammond.
Yeah, the Hammond stuff. All right, so coming into the playoffs, from your point of view, Elk, what changed the most? Because it seems like an unbelievably radical meta shift, but it also kind of seems like people are still getting to grips with it. It doesn't seem to have settled yet.
Yeah, so we had like a week, right? We had a week between the end of group stages and then quarterfinals, and then tomorrow we play our semifinals match actually. So there's like really not that much time to prep. The biggest thing is you saw in Overwatch League and in Contenders a lot of the triple tank, double sniper, solo healer comps with Mercy. And we played that a couple times and realized that it just can no longer function in the game because the Hammond at 600 HP can run and control on your Mercy, like just ground pound into your Mercy. With any follow-up damage, she just kind of dies. So immediately we started like trying to flex and be like, okay, well, I'll go on Ana instead of Mercy. I can sleep the Hammond and like heal myself, try to get away. And pretty quickly it was just like everybody playing like Lucio, Ana, Doomfist, Hammond. And just like we're going to all in you every fight with Sombra, make the tempo of the game super, super fast, and kind of just like see where we can get with it. But specifically, Zen and Mercy fell out of meta because they were too slow and too vulnerable to the Hammond dives to kind of like actually get value in the fights out of their heroes.
And just to be clear, by the way, in terms of like the words you just stated relative to pre-patch and what people expected, that's equivalent of the GIF where the guy like walks back in the room of the pizzas and everything's on fucking fire, because that's just like the biggest meta shakeup ever imaginable. It's like I walked away from this game for 2 minutes. 2 minutes and all of this has changed. I mean, it's been very exciting to watch, but on the same note, from the casting point of view, it's been a little bit jarring because going into that game where you know what Fusion was running, for example, in your matchup, where you guys were so dissimilar and you guys were like very clearly struggling, just like, wait, what are they doing? At first, it's like, they want to please the fans. Like, oh god, oh god, was basically the guttural reaction there.
Yeah, it seems like a massive shift. Like it's almost the game was already fairly defensive even before the addition of Brigitte. You know, you had like a lot of anti-dive compositions that were doing well in Overwatch League. Zen and Mercy, you know, slow. You get more value the longer the fight goes out. They're able to sustain themselves a long time. And then the addition of Hammond has been like pushing. It's such an all-in hero, right? To the point where you, if you commit with it, you are fully fucking committed.
It's not only that too. It's like if you want to counter dive with Hammond, you have to know in advance you're counter diving because you can't just like instantly use your mobility. You have to like set up you have to be in a position where, let's say we're planning to dive aggressively and they dive with primal. The chance that the spot our Hammond is playing, where he's in a good position to grapple in aggressively, but can also get back to our backline, is like almost never going to be true.
Yeah,
So you have to like before a fight really commit to a setup, and then like our Hammond waits 2 seconds, they dive, we just lose the fight. The fight's just immediately over because we took too long. And so it's a really punishing meta.
Now, kind of getting away from, I know scrims are like chaos and trying to like distill this in what I've seen from the sort of 30,000 foot observer view is that I think the sort of the way it's settled in terms of one hero becoming incredibly important here is that, and this came out left field a little bit for what people expected, is that the end final comps is that, yeah, you have big change in the support side, but you now suddenly have the resurgence of Sombra, right? Where Sombra is getting played nearly all the time for some teams. Now, is part of this, how much of this is that Sombra is actually one of the more effective heroes at shutting down Hammond, who really can't do anything after getting hacked? I mean, he's a sitting duck more so than most heroes. And how much is it just Sombra is a lot more flexible now that she's perma invis and thus can take her time on setups?
I think it's a little of both. It was also just like the meta was so prominently. So the thing about the Sombra, if you're looking at it on like you're playing attack on, let's say, Volskaya and you're playing Sombra, you will always, essentially, you should always have perfect scouting information, a perfect setup from one of your DPS, and her ult also wins her the fight whenever she gets it up. But she can also get out of every fight. So like there's a lot of aspects of her that like if she got completely reworked. Like you can't think about her in the same way unless she has ult. Just because you can't play Zen Mercy. If we're playing Zen Mercy and the Sombra decloaks behind me and Tracer triple blinks in, we can't scout and clear that Tracer from a 3-blink range. And the Sombra can just decloak and immediately be beyond me and Zen. And we're not going to be able to heal through that. So like she can deactivate Hammond. She's very strong against D.Va. She's very strong against Zen Mercy. And her invisibility actually was like a massive buff and gave her way more survivability.
Do you think that teams are not necessarily playing around her as well as they could be in terms of dealing with her? Where even in your series, I think one of the things I picked up on is that I noticed, like in the beginning, Nero had all time to work with, where he could basically eat a dinner behind you, nothing was happening. And then as the series went on, you guys, I don't know if it was intentional, I assume it was, is that you had more spam coming out, more it's just like shooting in the general area, because you're not seeing the Sombra, but you have a pretty good idea that she's there. So if you're a diva like Bernard was, it's just kind of like, all right, I'm just gonna shoot everywhere, and I might clip you, because it went from Nero having tons of time to Nero actually getting pressured way more over the course of the series. Do you think that part of it with Sombra right now is that people just haven't fully adapted to the world where she's perma-invis?
Yeah, I definitely think it's like a hard change to get used to. The other thing that teams have just kind of started doing, we actually started doing it in the middle of that match, is you send your Sombra on defense to find the attacking Sombra's locator. And what that means is that if she decloaks to pressure and you force her locator, she dies. Or when she does decloak to pressure, you call it and your Sombra breaks her locator and she dies. And it's stuff like that that you really have to do right now against the Sombra to just try to shut her down completely. Because spamming is like helpful and you might decloak her, but as long as she's being smart about it and like avoiding the easy areas to spam, it's generally pretty hard to end up decloaking her and finding her early. And even if you do, she just backs up and is back again in 10, 15 seconds. So I definitely think people are taking a while to adjust, and especially composition wise, right? Like you saw us full hold with Anna Bridget on defense Volskaya. Like when has that ever been possible in all of Overwatch?
Yeah, shit was going wild. It's like, yeah, we could deal with the goats comp. It's like, all right, well, this is predictable. Now it's just like, basically you're almost playing mystery heroes at points, just from the perspective of, from the casting end. I work with trends and long-term data, right? It's like, I know this team's going to run this on this point. I know this composition is good at this. And right now, just as teams are getting used to this meta, which seems more cack than most, it's like you're pulling a slot machine. It's like, ding, 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 on a Brigida hold. Let's go.
Yeah, something that I've noticed as well is teams running a number of triple support compositions with either the solo DPS being a Sombra, as you were saying, or being a range of other heroes, to throw a Hanzo in there or something like that. And the Brigitte and the sustain in general seems to be a good way of dealing with such all-out aggression kind of compositions as that kind of the Hammond Sombra Genji or the Hammond Sombra Doomfist. Do you think that the meta will settle down as people figure out how to defend against this dive a little better or out sustain it?
The issue is if you take a look at like the main comp we were playing, which is Lucio Ana, Genji Sombra, Hammond Diva, is that the comp has a lot of all-out aggression in the sense where Hammond can engage with the Genji and the Sombra and kind of like really easily pressure a backline. But if the fight goes long, like what do you do against our Nanoblade? So the main issue I see is like given the strength of EMP and the strength of Nanoblade, it's really hard to find a comp that can sustain through those ultimates. Like even Goats, if you get EMP'd, it's pretty easy to focus people down.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
Goats, if you get Nanoblade up, it's still pretty easy to focus people down. So I think that especially with the new support changes coming through, it'll probably make the more 2-2-2 or like solo support. You say triple support comps, but Brig in those comps more I feel like more functions as like a peeling off tank rather than a
Yeah,
support.
she's not really a
But
support.
I think it will make those comps stronger that focus more around like the mid fights rather than either all out aggression or like all out turtling. I think that it will be healthy for the meta, but really weird to adapt to.
So a little bit more specific on the heroes we did see get played here, but going the Sombras, that how stressful has it been? And obviously you have a close example of Zachary, but certainly throughout on hit scan players, where suddenly you go from being on Tracer Widow every game, which have very distinct play styles, and Zachary, for example, is a player that gets very good when he gets a lot of time to grind stuff out. Where suddenly you have to go to Sombra is a very different play style, and we saw him in match. He had to change his play style like pretty radically from maps 1 and 2 to 3 through 5, where in the beginning he was getting picked off a lot and then had to slow things down a lot. But that's a heavy playstyle change to put on a player relative to some of the other roles, where it's like you go from, all right, I'm sitting in the back clicking on heads, to I now have to be sneaky, etc. And I'm still in the expected to be this as a player. That's a radical change to adapt to in such short notice, it feels like.
Yeah, I feel like the main difference there is a lot of the teams were playing when we were scrimming were playing no team played Lucio Moira, first of all. So like that was pretty new for us to play against because teams either wanted the anti-nade or wanted the nano. So in the way their comp matched up against ours, like we can't dive them because we have no dive target, so we can't really all end them. But if we try to play back, like they do have a dive target on us in our Ana. So they're playing Lucio Moira, Hammond, Diva, Tracer, Sombra. So they're like all super mobile, all super like able to flank around and dive your backline really quickly. And their supports are not very vulnerable. Whereas for us, like Genji is pretty focusable when you're playing Sombra. Ana's pretty focusable when you're playing Sombra Tracer. So like Zach was playing a playstyle where against another Ana Lucio, it would actually be pretty good. He would be setting up, he'd be getting hacks on tanks when the fights would go long, and then he would kind of call the engages from there. But because they were going so quickly, he would kind of like set up, they'd dive us, and then he'd just be out of the fight. And that was on him, actually. He recognized that going into map 3, and he was like, okay, I'm going to play as our main DPS, and I'm going to sit in main, and I'm going to hack tanks and shoot them, and we're going to focus down these tanks.
Yeah, we even noted that in cast where I was looking, I was like, okay, he's dying early a lot, and then it's like, whoa, he's raided the shit he's raided it. He's gone way further back, and he was playing really well from like 3 to 5. So it was cool to see that adjustment.
Obviously, the playoffs have mixed things up massively. Playoffs in general, anything can happen. Elimination games, you don't normally have them in the regular season, especially when you have a brand new patch. So, ZB, what were your expectations coming into the quarterfinals of which teams you thought would be good? Have there been any major upsets from what you would have thought prior to the playoffs beginning?
Whoops. Absolutely, you had Legion getting upset by Energy, in my opinion. What just happened here tonight. And also, I mean, I expected Fusion to have a quick 3-0. I thought that was going to be a quick. That I was like, okay, Fusion, you guys are, you should have the huge edge here going into this. And it's like, oh, wow, that escalated real quick. So definitely wasn't expecting that to be as close as thought. NVV LNL went about it as expected. I actually thought LNL had a slight edge going in, but day of, after seeing like how much new meta screwed with Fusion's normal game plan, I thought that I the sort of changes would favor Envy a little bit more, just because you do have so many veterans on the team that are used to just dealing with random crazy stuff. And I actually do think the patch probably tipped it in Envy's favor. I think if Envy played LNL on the old patch, I think LNL would have won. It was still very, very close, but I do think that was sort of a slight upset that I wasn't expecting going in there. And today, I mean, XL2 went exactly as expected in getting the 3-0.
In terms of the groups that you thought were the most powerful, when you were looking at Group A and Group B, how did you think these two matched up? Because they don't actually get crossplay in the middle of the regular season, and so you have, different. For example, you had two unbeaten teams in both groups,
Yeah.
and two teams that went 0-5 as well. But then that middle of the pack is kind of very close between both of these groups. So when you were watching them and seeing them play, how did you think the skill matched up?
I thought it was actually pretty darn even for the most part. I mean, the biggest exception is that obviously in LNL's group, LNL was better than expected, where they weren't a team where it was like an easy 5-6. But between the two groups, LNL obviously was more of a wild card, but both teams had a team that was super dominant, and both teams had a team that was pretty much on the bottom. A little bit spicier with LNL's, but I mean, I actually thought it was probably one of the more well-balanced contender setup that we've had in terms of group strength. Skyfox is probably a good restart.
Yes. Fantastic. I love Discord crashing. All right, ZP, talk to me about the group strength then. We had three of the teams go through from Group B. Only one of the teams go through from Group A. Is this pure like playoffs chaos? The patch changing?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely playoffs chaos, because I think actually taking a look at the groups here again, just to refresh my all the stats and all the storylines in front of me. A lot of people have put Group A as the stronger group overall, especially because of how GGA was expected to come in, and also how LNL was sort of surging, right? Where you had a much tighter race in Group A relative to Group B, and I do think it would have been 2-2 here if it was on the old patch. I do think Legion, even though Panker, had a very individually skilled Hammond play, I do think Legion just bought in so hard on the new meta, as opposed to just running some stuff that they were more traditionally comfortable with, that they ended up dropping when I do think they would have gone through if it was regular season. So I actually thought the groups are pretty well balanced overall, where GGA's drop off was more than matched by LNL's resurgence. Group B, I mean, was very, very good in terms of overall play. You did have a bottom there, but you had the same storylines you had in Group A, in the sense that you had a team that was clearly above it all, that was 5-0 and XL2, and then relatively even matches from the next 3 teams underneath that. Although I would argue that Toronto, even at 2-3, actually played through the regular season fairly weak because those 2 wins came against bye week and Sky Foxes. So.
Yeah, yes, Group A was well in general as well. Actually, something that I wanted to talk about, but now seems a decent time, is that North America has way more academy teams, it seems, than almost any other region. I think by far more than any other region. There's one in Europe, and I'm not
There
even
is
sure.
only one in Europe.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
is it.
There's only one in Europe.
And they got relegated.
Are there any in Korea as well?
No, there's not Shanghai. Seoul is looking to make an academy team for
Yes, yeah.
next season. But I'm pretty sure Shanghai have Team CC.
Yes, yeah, they do.
Not too mistaken. Yeah, and I think that's it though, as far as academy teams go.
So,
Yeah.
how do you think that's changed the North American landscape? Do these teams actually get more backing behind them and have more coaching staff and structure than other teams around the globe, do you think?
It depends on the team. I mean, I'll let Elk speak to it, but everything I've heard is that the Fusion organization, for example, is super behind their team in terms of giving a lot of help and support. I mean, Tucker himself came out to Poland for the season 1 final. So you have some orgs that are very, very
Mate, he was just
highly
looking for a
involved.
good time. Tucker just came to
It's
Poland
just
for a
like, I
good
just
time.
want to have some fun up in Poland.
He genuinely didn't even know there was any Overwatch going on. He just
All
turned up to Katowice, and he's like having a mad party, and then he's like, "Oh, what are you guys? Oh, what are you guys doing here?"
Yeah, I'm vaguely associated with you. But it actually is something that varies pretty heavily from team to team. Obviously, XL2's invested quite a bit in the flying out their players from Korea to the West Coast. And that was actually one of the bigger stories and why Nene's been playing way better is that, guess what? They got him on Western Ping. You don't have the weird back and forth. Same thing for Fusion also. Obviously, I've already kind of mentioned that they gave support, but, you get players like Who Are You out there, and you don't have to worry about the weird server tag stuff that was going on season 1. I don't know what Envy has been providing their team, the Fuel organization here, but Envision was a weird case where even though they were never an academy team, they actually had pretty significant financial support. NRG has a compound. I think Mayhem is probably one of the only teams that didn't have a compound but still had training staff. So overall, I think it's safe to say, certainly compared to EU, NA's had a lot more infrastructure investment. I don't quite know where Korea is because I know Korea still has plenty of orgs that are there, and it's very centralized in terms of getting players together. Whereas if you're putting together a team of NA or EU, these are big regions, and people probably won't be together unless the org can actually fly them out.
Yeah, specifically for us, it was a little bit harder during our regular season because like Fusion were in Overwatch League playoffs.
Yeah.
So obviously like 90% of the resources went to that, which was super reasonable. Like you can't ask the team like, hey, you want to weaken your performance in the Overwatch League Grand Finals to support your academy team in the group stage that
Is
they're
that what
already
they did?
favored to.
Is that what they did? Is that why they
No,
lost to
no.
Spitfire? No, they don't even have an excuse.
No, thank God.
Oh God.
But yeah, so like for the last season playoffs, Kirby flew out with us because Arrow had just gotten picked up by Dallas. And going there without a head coach when we had a head coach the entire time was going to be awkward. So Kirby flew out with us, which was super great. Kirby flew out. Zach, he's like a producer guy for Fusion, but he was also helping with the management side for us, flew out. Tucker ended up flying out for the finals. So they're definitely very supportive of us overall. Like when we signed Bernard, the turnaround to getting him in Philly with us must have been 4 days. It was super quick. Like he was there. We played our first match when he was in Korea. We like signed him 2 days after, and he was in Philly before our next match. So like they've been great, especially just making sure we could all like play together on the same ping for this season.
Okay, all that tells me is that Philly must have one hell of a badass as an immigration lawyer. That's actually insane. I'm not sure how that happens, given that you have some teams that are just like, yeah, we'd really like to bring him in, but not going to be able to manage that for another 2-3 months. Philly's just like, yeah, we have a contact, we have a guy. We're just going to rubber stamp that, and hey, what do you know? He's in America. That's sick though. That's really cool.
Elk is legally not allowed to say anything because
Elk just like, I can't.
they used a
talk about
series of
connections.
elaborate tunnels and all sorts. Fusion Unis just got bought like tunnels under the wall.
They actually just like shipped him in a crate, like in cargo, and gave him an oxygen tank. He's like, it's fine. We're smuggling you in.
I would not be surprised. All right, something that I really love about Contenders NA, which I think a lot of OWL fans will enjoy as well, is that you do have these blended teams. So I'm looking at the roster now at the Fusion University, and it's a lot of American players, yes, which is great for Contenders NA. You're going to be able to develop those North American players, but you've also got really, really good talent from Korea. Like, not even. It's not like you guys have got the castaways of Korean contenders. You've got some like creme de la creme motherfuckers over here. Like, who are you, an alarm? And you know, Bernard as well. I'll give him a shout out. But it's really who are you, an alarm that like attracted me there. So, it what level do you think, Elk, the contenders NA scene has benefited from drawing in talent from other regions?
I think massively, especially because like NA is the only region that can do that. As sucky as that is to say, like you can't.
Got that cash dollar.
Yeah, well, that and also just like there's so many academy teams and like there's so many North American Overwatch League orgs that like that's where the funding went. So like you even have a team like New York Excelsior, entirely Korean roster, have an academy team of half American players in North American contenders, even though like if you thought about it as in like a global scale, you would expect them to have a Korean contenders team. So that investment alone, I think, definitely helped. The fact that Fusion has the selling point of having players like Carpe on their roster, to someone like Alarm, who's friends with Carpe, they were ex-teammates. Bernard, who's also ex-teammates with Carpe and Alarm, to kind of like bring them in and bring them over. And then Who Are You through the Lunatic High connection with Alarm, I think definitely helps. I do think the scene has become a lot better because of it. I think if you had just made North American contenders teams without imported players, it would probably be the second or third strongest region.
As good as
rather
contenders South America. Just
No.
the whole of the Americas would be as good as each other.
Let
I
me
think-
ask you that real quick,
Yeah,
just
sure.
to interject here, because it's not just, oh, we've had this player to the team are stronger. How much has it improved the natural talent of players in NA to sort of mix with some of these minds and strategies from other regions? So it's like, okay, obviously you add a player like Alarm or Who Are You to your team. They're very mechanically good. You're going to get a boost relative to some of the other options you might be able to get because there's a limited amount of like super good players in the region. But how much is just having their perspective and their input on the team? How much does that, say, improved you personally as a player?
I think specifically with Alarm, playing with Alarm has improved me the most as a player on every hero. Like, not only just because of like his mechanical skill and like when he wants something from me as like a player, he'll be like, please swap here, or like, what if you play Mercy here instead of Ana, or like, what if you play Zenyatta on this second point so I can stay Ana with ult and in the middle of a scrim without giving me any warning. But just like having him kind of, it's really easy to have a back and forth with him. Like he's a super kind person, but he's also like so renowned, if that kind of makes sense, that like I've gotten credit just from being his main support and him saying good things about me, which has been really weird. Like I run into Bunny or like Munchkin in a comp game and they say hi to me. And like as someone who
Is that the standard? Them saying hi? Just to be clear.
Even that's crazy. Like think about where I was a year ago, pretty much, right? Where I was playing an OPC. My team got 6th. We were like one match away from being relegated from the Oceanic Pacific Championship. Not even contenders at the time.
Hey, you guys did really poop.
We did not do great at all. Myself included, like individually. Whereas like coming into North American contenders, like we're still undefeated. Granted, we've looked, I think, a little bit shakier in the playoffs than we would have liked to, but like
Yeah, you almost got swept, just a little bit shakier. Just a big deal.
just a little bit. We had our first 3-2 of the season. That's exciting. But yeah, I definitely think that specifically for like myself as a main support and how to work with a flex support, and especially how to support somebody who like, if you pocket Alarm here, Alarm will kill 3 people. And being able to like rely on him to do that and kind of like build that bond. The same thing with Who Are You, like protecting him on Genji, trying to give him scouting info, setting up the nano blade, stuff like that. I definitely think helps me as a player when I want to work with people going into Overwatch League. It'll help me kind of like bridge that skill gap a little bit better.
Let me ask this, because we talk a lot about how great academy teams are for most of them and how things have gone. Is that, putting in perspective, how big was the accomplishment coming in from LNL to do as well as they did, basically up against a whole bunch of teams that had significant backing that they simply did not have resources to by comparison?
I think it's incredible of them. Like not only are at least half of their maps played on a coast where 3+ of their players get 220 ping, but like the time I played in the tier 3, tier 4 scenes since release. So like I played without pay for a very long amount of time. However, I was a kid. I was a minor. I only turned 18 this year. So like I didn't have the financial pressure on me that I think a lot of the players on LNL do. So like that dedication for them, I think really shows their drive to improve at the game. And like that's one of the reasons I know you guys pulled my tweet up on stream actually of us saying we were going to 4-0 GGEA, or me saying that. And that was more meant as like a nod to Ajax because I'm friends with him and I know him. And like he's been trying really hard for a really long time. And I think especially this season, you've seen his improvement just like as a player. That I really,
Very
really
much
wanted
so.
them to make playoffs. Like I know talking to him that it was a struggle for them to find an org because orgs thought they were going to get relegated. Obviously, if you make quarterfinals, you actually get a buy into the next contender season. So like that, I really hope, especially if like more academy teams come in, like if you see Valiant get an academy team. That's the only one I can think of off the top of my head at the moment. In North America, but like if you see more teams come in and try to support contenders, I definitely think they're people that should be looked at.
And to be clear, too, for those who are wondering, it's like, okay, what's the benefit of Academy team? In case someone's just like swooping on by and they're like, well, why is this important, right? It's important because it gives a team a big signing advantage. Where right now, I think they could do it as early as now, but obviously they'd probably want to wait until after Contenders Files to keep you guys focused. But essentially, Fusion gets first crack at anyone on Fusion University right now. So, and they get what's called right now they have an exclusive signing period, and they also have a right of first refusal if people go to sign them later on. So the better of a contenders team you can draft, the better talent you can bring up, the bigger advantage you have either in signing these players to your main team or potentially using as trade chips and deals down the line. So there's an inherent advantage to having a team that's doing well in contenders, to be clear.
Also, which is why Seoul Dynasty coming out with the Contenders team now is the most fucking genius play of all time, because they get around the fact that the expansion teams have first dibs on all of that Korean talent because they just suck it all up into their Contenders team, like this academy team, and sign them straight from the Contenders team into the main organization to fill in the slots of all these washed up motherfuckers who can't play the game anymore.
Yeah, it's the 900 IQ play where they're like, we're just gonna wait to make the contenders team at this point. We're really gonna sign them for contender season 3, guys. And then it's like,
Yeah,
oh, actually they're on
definitely
a
what
real
happened.
team. Funny that! I can't believe this happened this way.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, if we look at LNL in particular, because I think this was like a really awesome story of the season, because Contenders NA had been dominated so much by the academy teams, and they had done so well the previous season, and people weren't expecting as much from this team. What do you think the strengths of LNL were? Why do you think they were so good with such little? I mean, they did have massive motivation that's required to play when you don't have any salary and you're sat there grinding. But with all the disadvantages that they had, why was this team still performing really well?
So going into, and of course, Elka certainly will have many thoughts as a team that played against them quite a bit as well. But I mean, obviously, the number one story of the season was Sugar Free, right? Is that Sugar Free is sort of this phenom 15-year-old kid that is actually insane at the game, and he's someone where it's unfortunate that he is as young as he is because he's going to be in contenders for a long time. When frankly, he would get signed to OWL, I firmly believe, if he was available this year. So Sugar Free is kind of this like breakout talent of holy shit, like the new generation is coming upon us. Also on the DPS side, Enlair, who was kind of relegated to widow specialist, barely plays, comes in for a map every 2 matches type of guy, actually came into his own as a hitscape player that, as Elk alluded to earlier, was playing with very high ping. So Enlair kind of had his breakout moment. I'd also give a lot of like credit to their supports, right? Where Ajax is brought up. Ajax has been on the treadmill much as Elk has, and it's been a tough road in the tier 2, tier 3 world, but he put on a very solid performance where he's been grinding out the game for a while. You would rarely, if ever, see Ajax get picked off early. It was sort of a different player relative to a season ago. And then, of course, there's Dogman, right? Where, again, kind of on the same journeyman path where he was able to kind of channel his inner Jonak at points. He probably has played the most impactful I've seen him play in a while. It's all kind of come together at the same time. And, I would say the tank side, it's pretty decent for them. I was probably less impressive compared to their DPS and support play, but I actually thought Decod towards the end was looking really good also. So you kind of had a bunch of players peaking all at the right time for LNL is how I tend to look at it.
Yeah, I think another important note that I don't think a lot of people realize is they have a lot of support staff. Like Fusion Uni, we have a translator / manager who is fluent in Korean and fluent in English, and then we have a only Korean speaking coach. LNL, when we scrim them, they fill up the spectator slots between their subs and their coaches, assistant coaches, all that stuff. Like they actually have, and those have been picked up, I think, throughout the season. But like they have legit RC, they have Sephi, they have Sword, they have.
I'm looking at the list here. It's Kate, Sephi, Legit RC, Michael, who used to be with GGA, not like King Michael, but MKL. So a different Michael, just to be clear. There is confusion there when people look at it at a glance, and Silence.
Yeah, so like even though most of the people have pretty good experience in the scene. Sword was the coach of Grizzlies last season. Obviously, MKO was the coach or one of the coaches on Optic. So like I think those people really helped structure the team. Like when you have that many coaches, you can kind of get down to like individual coaching much more so than team coaching. I think that's one of the advantages Overwatch League has over contenders in a massive way, is that you can really have one-on-one time with a coach, try to work out like your own mechanical issues rather than just like as a team, what strategy do we like? As a team, how do we want to execute here? Like at that point, you can really get like internal and individual, and I think that really helps them improve. And obviously, like you can't, none of that matters without the drive from the players and the coaches. And I think that drive is a lot harder to have when you don't have like financial backing. And I know for me, like the pressure of not wanting to lose when we're down 0-2 does make me play better going into that third map. So like I wonder how I would personally perform if I was in contenders on an unsigned team where like everybody expects me to lose. I don't know if I'd play as well when like the pressure's on me. But yeah, I definitely think that the drive from the players mixed with their support staff and their experience really helped.
Okay, so continue talking. If you need to crap talk me outside, I'm going to walk over, grab a tissue, blow my nose because I'm sitting here like suffering. I'm not actually that sick, but I need to blow my nose. I'm sitting here, it's like I'm dying. Keep it running.
I'm not.
I can still
I'm
hear
just
what
gonna.
anything Sideshow says. So
I'm just.
Sideshow, go on a long monologue. I'm still in the same room.
I just want to kind of follow him with the webcam around the room as he blows his nose. No, what I actually wanted to know as well, when you look at the NA scene, is there are a lot of players that are going to be scouted for talent. Like not even the direct academy route straight into an Overwatch League team, but it's just um, a very vibrant scene in terms of potential because people have already imported the best of a lot of different regions into there. There you go.
This is the live stuff that we're getting right here.
There you go. I am. He's running off for a tissue. Who do you
Yeah.
think are some of the biggest names in terms of acquiring people for Overwatch League teams in the future? If you were going to be a GM or a consultant for a team in the Overwatch League, who would you really try and pick up? And I mean, we'll maybe say not Fusion
I'm gonna
University.
exclude, to be unbiased, I'm gonna exclude Fusion Uni. The first two teams I would look at would be XL2 and Gladiators. Despite Gladiators' performance in tournaments, which so far has been like they've been strong in the group stage, choked a couple times, and then come playoffs, they're like one map short of finishing it both times so far. Corey was in Team USA tryouts. I also know him personally. Like he's an incredible hit scan player. I'd want to see him, if not like maybe not as a starter because he's had some issues kind of performing under that pressure, but definitely like as a sub or as like a widow specialist because he is really strong in that role. Blase, who's the flex DPS for Gladiators Legion, I also think can get picked up. One, he already has synergy with Corey, and two, just like he's so far shown he can play Hanzo at a high level, Junkrat at a high level, Doomfist at a high level, Genji at a high level. Like what can't he play at that point? Panker, really all of Gladiators Legion, I think, could be in Overwatch League teams as starters or subs going into Season 2. Obviously, depending on how many expansion teams there are. And then kind of the same with XL2. I think that one of the weird things that happened with the Academy teams as they were forming is they kind of like got big name players and then used that to get other big name players. So like when Fusion wanted to pick up me and Zach originally, like right when they started scouting, they were like, yeah, we're going to get Alarm and who are you? And Zach and I were like, oh my God, that's amazing. Of course we want to join your team. And I know that like XL2 kind of did that same thing where they're like, we're getting Flower. Do you want to come be on a team with Flower?
Yeah.
And like that really helped kind of solidify like the strength of those top three teams, in my opinion. Yeah, so I definitely say Gladiators, XL2, not talking about Fusion Uni. I haven't really worked with any of the other individuals to be able to say like conclusively. I think Krakelaken from Toronto, ex Fusion Uni player, totally could be.
What about
on Mayhem?
the one player, and granted he's young, I would look towards just adding on a little bit is that you also have Smurf and Sharp that I would probably bring up there. When GGA was doing well, those two were like very, very good.
My main concern with them is when we scrimmed Optic a lot, obviously, because they were in our groups like after we beat them in the Contender Season 1 group stage, we scrimmed against them a lot. And Smurf and Sharp were they were the most annoying main tank and tracer to play against in all of Contenders. And they were even occasionally being more annoying than like the occasional Owl scrims we had. But come playoffs, like at LAN, they were not as impactful as they were in scrims. Like to such a degree where Alarm after the match was like, I don't think I got dove by Tracer once. And I was like, really? Like, I didn't feel like I was peeling her either. And he's like, yeah. And I think that, especially going into like an Overwatch League setting, would really concern me as a scout.
You're not wrong. I do think that they certainly underperformed at LAN. Sharp, I mean, also, but I would also give him a bit of slack there too, where he's like one of the younger players. So I mean, technically, he's not even relevant in the OWL conversation for a while.
Yeah, he can't even be picked up.
If we're talking about players play at that level, and in fairness, we'll get an answer to that question soon, right? With Overwatch World Cup coming in, Sharp is on Team Sweden, so you would think you would get a chance at the big stage there once more, and we'll see kind of, okay, was what happened in Poland a one-time thing? Was it kind of jitters, or will he be able to bring it up to the next level?
All right, ZP, because you were going and dealing with your sniffle disease instead of listening to my beautiful questions, I'll pose the same thing to you. I asked Elk if you were an Owl scout, a consultant for one of these new teams, or even one of the existing teams looking to pick up new talent, who are the top kind of 3 or 4 people that you would really be keeping your eye on from Contenders NA?
Okay, so let me preface this with: are you an Owl GM? Did you end up getting the job and you might have falsified your resume and you don't know quite to do? Do you need homework for NA Contenders? All right, excellent. Let me help you here. Number 1, Nene. Find a way to bribe him away from XL2. XL, if they know what they're doing, they will sign him, but maybe you could drive up the price. Be like, Nene, why don't you join our team for $200,000 a year? That's right. We got the good stuff. Seriously, Nene is going to be a top 5 DPS in OWL Season 2. The way I see it right now, he is that good. Second on the list, Panker. One of the most aggressive Winstons, a guy who continually contains and does super well. Like, he makes space, he makes big plays. And you ask any of the players around it, where you ask players like, who do you really hate going up against tank-wise? Panker is by far the number 1 answer of any NA Contenders player. I actually think it was a little bit of malpractice that he wasn't brought on the OWL Season 1 with what he was doing to Contenders back in Contenders Season 1. So Panker is an easy slam dunk going in. Then you look a little bit deeper. Let's see who else to throw in here. I would also say on the tank side, anytime I mention Panker, I think of Smurf. I think Elk actually brought up a pretty good point about, is he land tested? I'm not sure. But I also think like really good tanks are in short supply. And worst case scenario, it's bench depth there. I think Smurf is someone you have to be looking at. Now, Elk didn't mention Fusion University, so I will go there. Let me ask you, Elk, here. Is Alarm 18 this year?
Alarm and Who Are You will not be eligible until Overwatch League Season 3.
Oh, completely wrecked. Wow. Well, okay. Forget about Alarm and Who Are You. Just become friends with them for Season 3. I would say, given my time with you, Elk, it's not just saying it because you're on here, but I've actually gotten to hear you behind the scenes back at the Heroes Rumble, etc. I think that you're a very strong shot calling support. You don't get picked off very early. Like, it's very rare. It's like, oh man, Elk overextends, just got completely screwed there. Not something that comes out of my mouth very often. I would say that given your ability to shot call, given the fact that you are consistent, and you do have moments where you can't expect a flex, or you can't expect a main support to have too many pop-off moments, but you do have, I would say, more regular to a lot of the other supports in Contenders. When I think about that, I think about players like you, I think about players like Aid, that kind of sort of surprise you in what they do on that. And of course, when you do get to play Ana, where she hasn't been very meta until very recently, you've been quite good at her. So I would think you're a player that team should be getting a good look at. Who
right,
else? Because there's so many. Because there's actually way more, but is this for you, Josh?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I just want to divert away from the gobble elk stick kind of discussion and move on to something else.
Okay, two other players though on Fusion University, which I will comment on, is I think as a package they are very strong. Is Beast and Bernard, Beast Halo and Bernard. I think that Beast definitely had his issues in season 1 with maybe overextending and maybe playing a bit too aggressive. And he even, from our scrims, he had those issues coming into season 2. However, once we got Bernard in, and like him and Bernard have amazing chemistry just as like friends. Like in Philly, they went out all the time and like got food together and like played Maple Story together and like some of the weirdest things I've ever seen people do. But like they have become such a good tank duo, I think, just as far as like staying alive and communicating, that it's really helped us, especially on the support side, kind of get more space to operate. So like I don't want people to be tainted by the things that have been said about Beast Halo in season 1, because I do think him and Bernard as like a package deal would be really strong going into season 2 or
So,
season 2 of Overwatch League.
So I will say one quick comment, and I don't want to be a debate because obviously it's awkward. Your teammates are like, "Yeah, I agree with this weakness here, etc." And Beast Halo's like, "What the hell, dude? Like, this is PR." I think I'll say about Beast Halo to his credit is that he definitely reined in a lot of stuff from season 1. Where season 1, the general narrative that I would bring up, and it was pretty true when you talk to teams, is that Fusion's pretty good, but you focus Beast Halo, and then suddenly things go a lot better. Is that he's not the Achilles heel that he used to be. He's not the sort of focus this guy to bring Fusion to 5, like as it used to be to a degree. What I would say for Beast Halo that gives me a little bit of pause is that I still don't look at him and see the explosiveness, hero plays that sort of are endemic to the main tanks that sort of define things at an OWL level that you see from, say, a Panker, right? And even right now, when you look at adaptability, right, is that I would say Beast Halo struggled a bit on Hammond, which not entirely all on him, but someone like Panker just comes in and is just like redefining the world. So not to say that both couldn't be an OWL, by the way. I just think that Beast Halo is probably, he's shown the ability to improve. Is he 100% there? From the casting point of view, I'd be on the fence just a bit.
Now, I don't know whether you've realized, but like 90% of the people that you're talking about as like, these guys are sick, you got to pick them up, are Korean players that have come over to the Contenders North America and, have been brought over because they were sick. It's like great scouting from the Contenders North America teams. And then you're going to expect them to then go on to Overwatch League success as well. Who do you think are some of the best talents in the scene that are kind of homegrown? Who do you think are the best North American players? In fact, let's go down to each position and like, who do you think are some upcoming players with potential from North America or maybe even from Europe? Actually,
I was gonna say, I think you should be fair game here as well, like going into it. Even though we are talking North America, like your basic goal here is name me players that didn't come in straight from Seoul. Is basically what you're asking.
Absolutely, yeah, because then it's just a broken game, You just list all the Korean players and you're like, they're the best.
Okay. That's fine. That's actually at some point I want to get bare hands on a show and be like, so what was the hardest part for you about building Team USA aside from the fact that you couldn't grab an entire Korean team? Yeah, bare hands. Show us your GM chops, but that's for another time. Okay. NA players, I will give credit to Mangachu here, where I think Mangachu has been sort of on the journeyman path for a long time in projectile DPS, where he's had moments where he's been good, but he never like hit the next level. Truth be told, thinking about him as a player, I kind of had my doubts on whether or not he would hit that next level. I actually thought that he was a player that was skill capped and was kind of the first guard of players that would good enough to be good in contenders, but not good enough to get in the OWL. I've changed my opinion over the course of the season, and I actually think Mangachu has proven that he can play at an OWL level. I think he broke through some of his limits. He's been very, very good. And testament to that is that I think XL2, if Mangachu wasn't performing, would not have had any issues perma-benching him in favor of Nanohana. But even though they've been playing a little bit differently in terms of maps they're on, by comparison, I would argue that Mangachu has been playing better than Nanohana all season long, which is one of the biggest surprises of the season and one of the biggest testaments to Mangachu. I think he deserves a spot, is what I would say.
Do you agree with that, Elk? You're nodding along. So
I played with Mangachu at LAN. I played with Mangachu at LAN on Sun with Face Clap, kind of a meme LAN in Taiwan. And Zach was also on that. Goliath from XL2 was on that. And the main thing I noticed about Mangachu is that like he has a really, really high mechanical skill cap if he's having fun. And as soon as he stops having fun as a player in the game, he doesn't want to play. He'll sometimes start complaining quite a bit. And he will just kind of like shut down, go for hero plays, stop functioning. As long as you can keep the team atmosphere where like it's positive and he can play something he likes playing, he's both a good teammate and a really good player. So I definitely agree. Given his performance, I'd say 100% he's been better than Flower or Nanohana. I don't actually know why you'd play Nanohana over Mangachu currently, given how Mangachu's been performing. So I think if people thought Nanohana deserved a spot, 100% you have to say Mangachu deserves a spot after his performance.
Now, the Nanohana drop-off thing has been something that I thought would happen actually if you leave the guy outside of like top level competition for such a long time, and I think he was even overrated when he was playing. I got a lot of shit for saying that he was overrated back when he was slaying people in the World Cup and stuff. But how do you contextualize Nanohana's performance over these two seasons of Contenders? Because he was lauded as a god, as the guy that kind of turned LW Blue around. They went to a championship in IM Kyangi. He did have really high levels of individual skill on a number of heroes. He was pounding people on Widowmaker and Genji back in the day. He plays a whole range of heroes. Do you think you plug him into a top team and he gets back to his old level, or is this somebody that's now washed up?
So
I would.
you,
You first, though.
Okay, sure thing. So I think that there's a couple examples of this happening currently that have maybe been a bit more accelerated. Is like Hagopian went from London Spitfire to Mayhem Academy, and I don't think has performed amazingly compared to what you would have expected of him knowing he was on London Spitfire. Hureg went from London Spitfire to Metabellum. I don't think he's been performing as you would have wanted him to on that team. So I think
Plays
that
for Runaway, but yeah, he's been
Runaway.
a bot.
So I think it's like I think it's part of the transition of like a lot of the reason players get good is the infrastructure they're in. And like, yeah, they can maintain that skill for some period of time coming out of that infrastructure, but they don't get to like keep that level of play. So for someone like Fissure, he moved from his set infrastructure to he got to build his own infrastructure on a team pretty much. And like that let him shine as a player because he was like, I know what I want. I know how to set up the system to get it. This is what we're doing. Whereas like if you take a player like for me, for instance, I'm a very argumentative player in VOD review. I want to make sure that all of our points are perfectly thought out. And if I think you're being like wishy-washy on one point, I will argue with you about it for 30, 40 minutes. If you took me and put me into a team where like there were two people on that team who already IGL'd, I don't think I would be as good as a player, even mechanically. Because when I'm comfortable in a game, my role in that game does need to be in some aspect like post-fight ult check, pre-fight setup, how do we want to play this fight? Scout the flankers for me. Like that's the kind of role that makes me comfortable in the game. So I could totally see putting people into new environments. Like you can not only make them uncomfortable from a communication standpoint, but also a mechanical standpoint.
Gonzi P, give me your diagnosis. We're gonna see a sick Flower in either way.
It's hard to say. I mean, you take a look at where he's been. Like, let's look at his path here objectively from what we've seen. He came in late in season 1, and very much underperformed. Now, I think in that case he was dealing with higher ping, where he hasn't had to deal with it this season. But
I'm pretty sure he was at the NYXL house the entirety of last season.
He was. Okay. I wasn't sure on that. I was giving the benefit of the doubt. So, okay, he looked really rough in season 1. Like, it was sort of like, oh, like he's coming back in. XL2 is about to dominate everyone. It's like, oh, no, you're not. It's like, what is going on here? Now, part of it is that I don't think Megachu was playing as well back then. DPS duo synergy is really important. Like, he really stepped up between season 1 and season 2, but I don't know. It just, he did not really, like, Flower looked quite not good in season 1 to say the least. Like, it was almost like a different player. Season 2, by comparison, it's a weird thing because I would say Megachu has like pretty candidly outperformed him, but it also hasn't been like he's going in and it's, oh God, you're throwing the game. You haven't gotten the feeling that you've gotten from a lot of NRG games, especially before he could play Sombra, and where Poise would go in and just end up dying early every team fight. Just like, what is going on here? You know, Nanohana hasn't really embarrassed himself this season, but it's sort of the difference between use an NBA example. He went from LeBron James to like 8th dude on the bench. And is the 8th dude on the bench bad? Not necessarily, but is he the star of your team? Is he the guy you build your team around?
Yeah.
No. So is the potential still to be there? Sure. One thing I'd note as a mitigating factor, and bear in mind it's nebulous and it could just be an excuse, I don't know, but I think it's fair to bring up because multiple people have brought it up, is that there is a world where People have mentioned that Flowers actually had injury issues where I guess he was recovering from a wrist injury of some sort, or he's had some sort of chronicness that's there.
Yeah. I mean, he's had a finger injury his entire
Yeah.
life.
So it's hard to say. Maybe there's a case where he overpracticed and then need to take time off, or maybe he's always going to have those issues. I don't know, but it would account in part beyond the other reasons as to why he had such a drop off from being the hero and slayer of the USA in the Overwatch World Cup 2017 to just relatively mediocre, well, bad to mediocre this year. Right now, if I were looking at him, I kind of feel like his fate is one of those where I actually don't think he's proven to be good enough to be an OWL for season 2. I think that of the new teams coming in, and certainly of maybe some of the old teams that are desperate and looking for a wildcard play, I still think he probably carries enough swagger from his old reputation that someone will buy in. I think he'll be an OWL season 2, but the odds that he ends up being a bust are a lot higher than should make anyone comfortable for if they are the ones who sign him.
I think you've also got to look. Like, I've just brought up his profile page here on Over.gg, and the guy was not playing scrims for like a country fucking age. You know, he was, and that has got to do weird things to you. If you've been outside of the top level and you haven't been grinding for a long time, like when he first played in that first season of Contenders, that's basically what I chalked all of that up to. It's just like, dude literally has not played any Overwatch since the World Cup in October. And what was that? October, November, December, January, February, March. Like 5 months of not playing any scrims with any team, as far as I know. And then even during that period, it's World Cup. It's not as intense. So I wonder whether it would still make sense, right, to take a punt on him if you're looking to fill your bench up with some dude that in the past has been capable of glory.
Yeah, and that's why I said, that's why I do think he's going to get signed. I'm just like, I'm not sitting here being like, yeah, he's going to dominate the league. Is that hype train is past, and now he needs again the montage to prove himself again, pretty much.
Yeah, I do think he's also just a victim of like people overhyping him, where the expectations put on him were just not fair by any possible
Any mortal man
metric. Yeah, like for instance, who are you? I think like who are you is one of the only players I played with where like he had all this hype behind him when he comes in. And it's like today in scrims, who are you did without Blade 1v4. Just straight up 1v4 in a team fight. And we're just sitting there like, great, that's a great win for our team fight that we messed up and fed horribly. And it's like, I think expecting players to always perform at that level kind of hurts their development and also hurts their face value sometimes.
By the way, just a testament to like how competitive Who Are You is that I've seen firsthand is the entire you think back to Poland where you have the show match going on. You guys have already won. Like it should be happy times. You guys with the show match. Who Are You's just pissed. He's angry. He's like, oh, we lost this. It's just he's a very competitive person. So
yeah.
And then and he's able to channel that into just otherworldly performance in his gameplay. It's great to watch.
Yeah, he's always been a fantastic talent, especially on Genji. The guy was like literally the best in the world for a while, and then even arguably he just wasn't on the best team because he got benched. All right, another player on XL2 before we move away for a second that I want to touch on, because I'm coming at this from like the idea that a lot of these people that are kind of interested in getting back into Contenders will know big names, but they won't know like kind of how they've continued to perform. So another guy that's, I mean, saying he's a bit like Nanohana might be completely ridiculous, but if you followed North America, Adam was a guy that everybody was saying should have been a clear pickup for the Overwatch League, even halfway through the season when it was the Mercy meta. People were like, dude, this guy was like incredible when it came to Mercy back in the day. So what has the trajectory of Adam been like kind of throughout these 2 seasons of Contenders? Do you think that he would be a pickup for L?
I think so, in the sense, and this is a weird thing for Adam, is that so the way I've always looked at Adam, and I'm going to channel my inner Hex here, or maybe it's Hex channeling his inner me, I don't know, but this is like a saying that we've both shared between us all the time, is that, well, he's not going to lose you the game, he's probably not going to win you the game. Adam's just kind of, he's there, right? And that's not necessarily bad. Obviously, XL2's been doing really well with him, but Adam's never the guy as a support that's going to go for like the crazy ballsy play, but he's the guy that is going to do his job and do it well in most situations. Like I've not, in as long as I've casted Adam, I can think of very few times it's like, oh man, Adam's just feeding. Adam's just constantly putting himself in bad positions. Adam is always there, always reliable. But on the same note, because he doesn't put himself in kind of those hero moments as often as other players do. I do think he kind of gets forgotten a little bit from time to time. But you take a look at OWL, there is still a need for supports that can just simply do their job and they don't have to be as crazy playmakers, right? I mean, Lord only knows, Florida Mayhem really could have used Adam this season. I firmly believe, given where Zebo was performing throughout most of the year. So Adam's one of those cases where, is he going to be the best support in the league? Probably never. Is he going to be a player that could contribute to a team, do well, and still have a good career? I think yes.
So as another main support, it's really hard to comment on other people in your role, mostly just because like you don't know how they fit into teams, and you also don't know like I got to see a Moth fit into a lot of teams because we were in Team USA trials together, whereas like I didn't see as much of Adam playing in Team USA trials just because like obviously Moth is the starter this year, so it was easier to watch him play. So I can't really comment on like how Adam plays as an individual, but like watching his plays from like my perspective playing against him, he's not very easy to dive. He doesn't get picked off a lot. He is generally a really safe player. And I do think that he is better than, off the top of my head, at least 6, if not 8 main supports in Overwatch League. Like he's definitely a talented player who could be in Overwatch League, and I think that I'm not really sure how he wasn't in season 1, to be honest. Like I don't understand what transpired to make that happen, but from an outside perspective, it's wild.
I mean, I would just say part of it is that I would say for Overwatch League Season 1 is that you had a mishmash of GMs, right? I don't think every team made the right decisions. I think there were sort of casualties of war. And I think Adam was one of those casualties where, again, he's sort of one of those players where he's not the guy that stands out as a flashy, holy shit player like some other people do. He's just simply solid and reliable. And, basically what you just mentioned there syncs up with how I always viewed it from the casting perspective. And I just think that's not sexy to people when they were building a team in season 1, even though he is effective.
So to move on to some other old names, we haven't talked about Team Envy that much, but these guys have got a lot of names that people should be familiar with. They kind of picked up the core of Envision as well, a few players. And then they've added old Tailspin back into the game. The man, the myth, the legend, the the flight dodger, the Scourge of Korea, he who will not play in Apex Finals. I don't know what his nickname is these days. But how has Ronnie Dupree Jr. been performing so far? I know, ZP, that you were saying that with Tailspin and Buds on the team, they've kind of been a bit better at adapting to these patches because they have seen basically everything happen in Overwatch so far.
Tailspin's been a mixed bag in terms of where he's at. And yes, I do think both these players are pretty good at adapting the random things. I would say the biggest thing that's defined Envy, and it's also like probably why they're kind of scary to go against in a way as well. At least I've been thinking this as Fusion, is that you look at their DPS duo. I would say Tail and Buds right now are inconsistent. I'd say Tailspin's probably more inconsistent because of rust than anything else, where he has steadily improved over the course of the season, actually came out with an incredibly well-played May. Like, the one thing about Tail that's always been weird to him on his player arc is that even though he has very good aim, I've always thought he's a player that actually could have been a really good main tank if he ever, like, went into that, because his game sense of where he puts himself is often very, very good. So that's kind of showed up in him playing a shutdown May against LNL. He's been flexing the Tracer, where if I'm going to raise Tracer, I'd say his Tracer is probably lower half of contenders. I mean, again, he's never feeding, but he's not crushing teams either. His Pharah, depending on the matchup, has looked like the Pharah of old, and then there's times where he's just kind of gotten wrecked by new players. Probably the most notable was that when he went up against Stratus just completely dominated him in Pharah v Pharah. But it's also weird because we've seen him come out and like channel some of his old former glories. So Tailspin has kind of been a mix of multiple things there. I don't know what to expect from him on any given day. I truly don't. He hasn't thrown for his team at any point. There's never been any point where I'm looking at Envy, I'm just like, oh man, Tail's just really costing him the game or anything like that. And he's had more upside than not. It's just, again, I think rust is kind of plaguing him a bit. Buds is just classical Buds, where Buds has moments where he looks like he could be a dominating high-level OWL DPS, where there are certain games where he comes in as Widow, for example, and just simply annihilates the other team. And then he has games where I don't know what he's doing and it doesn't make any sense. And then you have whatever the hell happened against LNL, where he's just like, I play Doomfist now, and just completely ruins LNL and ends them in the playoffs. So between the two of them, again, there's a lot of FPS experience there. Do I know how they're going to perform on any given week? Absolutely not.
Yeah, so right when they picked up Tailspin or started trialing him, they were trialing a lot of flex DPS. And when he got in the lobby, everyone on Fusion Unity was like, he is still in the scene. Like, he still plays Overwatch. We didn't expect anything of him.
He's
And
still alive.
he performed well. Like, he played fine. He wasn't feeding. He had like a couple pop off moments. My concern going against Envy is Buds. If you watched Buds play against XL2 last Contenders playoffs, Buds looked like he was transcending time and space, hitting some shots on Widow that should not have ever been possible. Like he's gonna grapple into the Orisa shield and kill the enemy Mercy and trade. And it's like, well, you killed Mercy, so you traded, so it's worth it. So like he is definitely the scariest player for me. He has had pretty bad performances occasionally, so I'm hoping tomorrow is one of those days, but we'll see.
Let me ask you, why do you think Buds is so variable? I mean, as a caster point of view, it's one of those things where I hate having to make this judgment as a player because players get really fucking pissed off at me. The most famous case of all time, and Josh, you saw his game as much as me. You can back me up, and it wasn't just me creating a narrative at thin air. Is that, the old school Too Easy stuff where Too Easy would come in and sometimes be just fucking incredible, better than Taimu, who at the time was kind of seen as the top hit scan DPS in those competitions. And then he would just come in at times and be terrible. Buds kind of channels a little bit of himself from time to time, and I don't have a logical reason for it. I mean, I know Buds really well as a person, and sometimes I wonder. I know he gets like really emotional when he plays in terms of like just high tension, etc., and that can maybe send him the high highs, send him the low lows. I don't know. Elk, what's your take on that?
My guess is that he plays emotionally, and that the team environment probably really gets reflected in his play. So I know that like I know from people who have interacted within the team before that when they start losing, they had a tendency to tilt, and that when they started tilting, certain players on their team would start underperforming because of it. And so that like even though they might not cause the tilt or they might not be part of the tilt, the fact that it was happening would bring down their individual performance. And I think you saw that a lot in like all of the matches we played against them so far have been really, really close. Every time we played Envious or Envision as Fusion University, they've all been insanely close, grueling matches, but the last map is usually not close. When we get to map 5, normally it's pretty clean, and I think that just has to do with like them as a team. They're pretty momentum focused. I was really worried for them actually going against LNL when they hit map 5, because I thought for that reason they were going to end up losing map 5 and LNL would make it to semis.
Did you foresee the Buds Doomfist?
Yeah, that's actually, it's been played so much in scrims, you have no idea. The number I've seen, probably each role on DPS from each academy team, like each contenders team overall, play Doomfist. Like there are times where it's like you just need to be on Doomfist. Doomfist Sombra, Doomfist Genji, like at some point you need to be able to play Doomfist.
Fair.
Okay, a team and player that I want to talk about as well, which you will see in the semi-finals when you tune in, which you will, is Rascal on NRG, because this guy, I've enjoyed watching him play many times. The guy's really talented. He's got a reputation now because he was removed from London Spitfire or traded away, and then removed from Dallas Fuel as well, of being like a bit of a problem causer, I guess. But there's no denying that he's kind of got a leadership figure, and did that on Cogni Panthera, and he's a really talented guy. How has he been performing for this team?
Oh, to me. Rascal, basically, he's been incredibly good when he's been playing with NRG. I would say that relative to some expectations where people are like, okay, what can we expect? Obviously, kind of ran the gauntlet OWL. He's been extremely good. The weird thing for NRG though is that has it overall been a gigantic upgrade for them? It's questionable because basically the cost of adding Rascal has been the disappearance of Stratus, or Stratus getting put into roles he's not comfortable in, because NRG, their projectile carry before was Stratus, and Stratus really doesn't have bad games. I can't really think of times where he's been on projectile and he's looked bad. He's always been not only good, but damn good. He was a player that was highly sought after by most of the teams and contenders, not Fusion, because Fusion, of course, had Who Are You in the Wings, but most of the other teams really wanted him in season 1. And I know just from inside people telling me is that NRG went out of their way to outbid and get Stratus on their team, and Stratus has rewarded them with really good play. So Rascal coming in is weird because Stratus is a projectile player that I think most teams and contenders would have been happy to have added to their roster, and yet it's resulted in him getting benched because of the weird like triangle they have with Poise, where they brought in Poise as a hit scan specialist. And is Poise better than Stratus on hit scan? It's possible. I don't think Stratus's hit scan is anywhere near as good as his projectile play. But on the same note, Poise has basically for most of the season gotten picked off a lot in the hit scan role. And it's ignored kind of the one obvious thing that could have happened here in this particular setup is that I don't really understand why they never pursued something of putting Rascal on hit scan and Stratus on projectile, because the few times we have seen that, it's been absolutely horrifying from NRG. And I mean, there's potential reasons for that, right? Like one potential reason could be is Rascal's just like, I'm the best projectile DPS player. I want to play it, figure it out. Like, I don't know what's been going on there. I would say overall, Rascal is probably a slightly better than Stratus, so he's been good for NRG. Certainly, is the reason why NRG was able to win tonight, just continually playing out of his mind. But it is weird because I don't think it was like necessarily a full straight upgrade because of the weird situation, the NRG strengths that they had prior to him being added to the roster.
Yeah, to touch on that too, I think that when I saw Rascal picked up mid-season, or like, I guess it was towards the start, if not a little bit before week 1. I had assumed it was more of something of like Shock securing him, because NRG is Shock's academy team going into Overwatch League Season 2. That's kind of what I looked at it as. But I could also totally see it, like, if NRG thought they needed a leader, like, in their team, and they weren't sure if anybody was, like, up to the plate, that picking up Rascal was, like, the insurance. Like, if you couldn't get somebody on the team to lead, like, you knew Rascal was, one, a proven flex DPS who could, like, play a lot of heroes and could lead the team and lead improvements. So, like, he's kind of like a safety in that way, where, like, if Stratus ends up just being amazing and Poise ends up being amazing, maybe you don't need Rascal in the starting lineup. But like, if you still have those leadership issues and you still have some mechanical issues, like, he's 100% going to perform and be safe. Like, he is stage tested pretty much. Like, he has shown he can play Overwatch at a very high level.
Out of curiosity, and I don't know if you have any insight to it one way or another, because I mean, it's kind of one of the great mysteries of contenders is, do you have any idea why NRG might not have gone with the, from the outside in? I mean, you could feel free to tell me if I'm wrong or I'm missing something here, but to me, the drop off from Stratus or Rascal the Stratus projectile was significantly less than the drop off from Rascal the Poise on hitscan. What do you think the reason might be as to why NRG didn't pursue that setup where you make Rascal your hitscan specialist?
Well, assuming Rascal is probably the leader in the team, he probably isn't comfortable leading from that kind of hero, would be my guess. Like, for me as an IGL, I can IGL on main support, in my opinion, effectively. I can IGL as Ana pretty effectively. But like, if you put me on Zenyatta, I have to focus so much more on what I'm doing on that hero to not feed, that it's really hard for me to like do the normal communication I would. So my guess is, it's like, even though mechanically they might perform like better overall in those two roles, that if you want Rascal in like the confident leader role, you need him in the flex DPS position.
Also, Rascal's never played the hit scan DPS on any of the teams that he's been in, actually. Although he's an incredibly flexible player and can play a lot of these heroes. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen him on Widowmaker. And normally when he gets paired up with another DPS, it's always like he's playing the flex DPS role and he leaves other stuff to other people. So I think it's a preference thing. Now, coming up to the semifinals, we've got our semifinals that are happening tomorrow. Fusion University against Envy, NRG, XL2. ZP, what are you most excited for in these semifinals?
Oh, it's absolutely Fusion versus Envy. And, Elk kind of stole my reasoning going into there, is that I don't know what to expect. And a big part of it is the variability of players like Buds, right? Where I think it's a case where Fusion is not entirely comfortable with the meta yet, from what we've seen objectively. And you have Envy coming in as sort of the star course, where are they favored? No, but they've also generally been winning. And again, we don't know what Buds is walking through that door. If it is World Destroyer Buds, that's going to be incredibly close of a series. It's going to demand maximum from Fusion. So I just think that series, it's not really clear who's going to take it, even though I'd still give a slight edge to Fusion. So that series alone is pretty big. On the other end, I do feel like XL2 is just going to roll over NRG. I don't
Do you
think
think this is just a smoking?
Yeah,
it's just going to be XL2 all the way.
XL2, I think, is actually probably going to get 3-0.
Have they had an easy bracket then, because when you look at Mayhem Academy and then NRG, who had like what you would call an upset over the Gladiator Legion, uh, it was like probably to do with the playoffs as well, judging by Gladiator's performance today. But have they then had an easy route to the grand final, or are they actually just that dominant?
Oh, they're definitely getting an easier road because they don't have to deal with peak Legion. I think that Gladiators Legion was better than their 3-2 record would show. And I think that if they had even one more week to deal with this meta and get their tanks back in sync, where I think the way this meta shifted was very disruptive to tank synergy. If Legion had another week, I think they'd be a different story. But XL2 gets to dodge a bullet here. They don't have to deal with, Peak, Panker, and Gods working together as a really good duo. Instead, they, because NRG is outperformed, because Legion, perhaps was not ready with the Hammond, they do get a bit of a break, I feel like.
What's your thought on that, Elk? Because they have been unbeaten throughout the season, much like you guys. But you had that really close game against Toronto Esports. People weren't expecting that as much. They're looking fairly solid to roll their way through to the grand finals.
So my concern with XL2 is they have we scrim them a lot. We were their warm up for today. Obviously, we'll probably stop scrimming them now because they'll likely be our finalist if we make it.
You don't need to tell me the results of the scrims because nobody ever loses.
They have some really weird inconsistencies that I don't understand. Like even in season 1, like they had an insane roster going into Contender season 1. Arguably, probably the second best roster in all of Contenders, assuming you considered ours better because we had Who Are You and Alarm. And like they really underperformed. And individually, it didn't feel like anybody on their team should have been underperforming. I think their tank line is definitely a lot stronger now than it was. But like my concern with them is not individual at all. I think everybody on their team is super individually skilled, and especially against NRG, I think they should win off that alone. But sometimes they split, sometimes they waste ults. So I do think there are definitely 1 or 2 in Contenders right now. I guess we'll find out if we're 1, 2, or 3 tomorrow. But I do have concern for that match. Like NRG looked way better against Gladiators than they had all of the group stage. So like if Rascal shows up again and is popping off on the Tracer, it could go NRG's way. I think if you look at it statistically, XL2 should 3-0, but we probably should have 3-0'd TO, and that was way closer than it needed to be. So it'll be interesting.
The one thing I would say would go against NRG having the day they had today is that I think 2 things really helped NRG today, and I'm curious if you agree or disagree. Well, granted, I know you weren't able to watch as much, but from what you know the situation, I suppose, is that Panker was on Hammond, and one thing is that because he's on Hammond and not Winston, is that Rascal, when he was on Tracer, had a lot more room to deal with because Tracer, I think, could more easily maneuver around Hammond and where he's going for. You don't have to worry about Winston just creating bubbles and making life really rough for you. And also, Corey is kind of another one of those players that has really good days and really bad days. But Corey, even at peak, challenging Rascal is pretty difficult. Whereas by comparison, I don't think Nene's going to have any fear of Rascal. I think Nene's going to take that fight straight up, and I think Nene's going to win anytime that they have those one-on-one fights. I mean, Rascal will get him more than expected. It would be more of a 60-40 thing, but I think Rascal has more things that are going to get in his way from the NYXL side, where NYXL, they're not afraid to keep running Winston. Like, they will run things, I think, that will contain Rascal and make the rest of NRG beat them.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. The other thing is, on the Tracer, right now you have a lot more room than I think you ever have had in Overwatch, because everybody kind of forgot she existed. Like, Brig came out, hard Tracer counter. Everywhere stops playing Tracer. Like, you even saw on Koth Widow Brig over Widow Tracer. Like, there was so little Tracer, was crazy. Even in Dive, it's like people played Genji Doomfist. People played like Genji Widow. Like, you just didn't dive with Tracer. So I think that the teams that can adapt to Tracer being playable again, because Brig, while okay, is pretty weak into the Hammond generally, and the Doomfist punishes her a lot. So I agree. Nene should win the Tracer duel straight up. I think XL2 is adaptable enough to, if Rascal is having an above average day, be able to shut him down and kind of like change their strategy slightly to approach that. I do.
Oh, go on.
Sorry,
carry on.
I do still think NRG, if they play Stratus, Rascal, and Poise like they did a bit today, they could still have the upper hand, because there are a lot of maps where like having that flexibility in your support line is really important, and I don't know how comfortable Adam is in particular on those heroes.
Fair.
So looking at the other matchup, I'm not going to make Elk analyze his own game, but ZP, what do you think the keys are between Envy and the Fusion Uni game? Apart from Buds turning up or not turning up, are there other things that Envy can do to be able to bring it to Fusion Uni?
Oh, I think right now, if you look at how Fusion played before, is that I don't know if they're still going to play it, but I don't think Beast Halo is comfortable at all on Hammond right now. I think that Hammond actually brings back Beast Halo's old weaknesses, where Beast Halo really learned the rein in on Winston. He was feeding early a lot on Hammond, and I think that if they run that again, you make your main gameplay plan of you punish Beast Halo early, you punish him often, you bring back that old weakness. I think that's the start part. And then the second part is that Zachary definitely was not as comfortable in the Sombra v Sombra. So I do wonder what happens if you pressure Zachary more in that world, because Zachary's comfort zone this season has definitely been on the Tracer Widow, where he's been legitimately very, very good. I would say that it was kind of weird in season 1 where it felt like his best zone was Tracer and then his Widow was kind of a project. And clearly project successful coming in here, whereas Widow went from consistent but not super playmaker to holy shit, super playmaker. But now suddenly he has to adapt to Sombra. And, Zachary strikes me as a guy where he's more of a grinder for some of these things. He needs more reps. And the fact that he's getting put onto something that, is not 100% his forte and he's still having to make adjustments to it is that, if you can find a way to isolate him more and work on his weaknesses, I think you can throw Fusion off a little bit more. And of course, I mean, the X factor here is what Buds is going to show up, right? Like, God only knows in regards to that. So those are kind of the things that strike out to me early on when looking at ways to beat Fusion. And meanwhile, if you're Fusion, I think Fusion, to a degree, you wonder about how much you can push old strategies, especially if you're running something like a Hammond and it's clearly not working.
Yeah, I'm going to decline to comment.
Yeah,
on
that's fine.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, Envy isn't listening. Just mentions like, I think Fusion. We look at Envy. We're strategy is we're gonna really look to deal with this person here, and Tailspin is just like silently in check, like, all right. So yeah, decline the comment seems to be wise.
A very wise decision. But guys, semifinals happening tomorrow. When is the grand final? There's actually a big break until the grand final, right?
September 9th, immediately after the World Cup group stage.
There you go.
So
Okay.
Zachary, if we make it, is going to be playing both his group stage matches immediately into his Contenders final match.
Yeah, interesting.
And Mangachu has to do much the same on Team Canada. So I hope you're ready for them real quick jersey swaps. What's going to be going on there?
That's great. And then, when all the crowds there for America and for Canada, they have opposite sides to cheer for as well, assuming Mangachu gets played. Or they can just cheer for Korea and, you'll win either way.
By the way, it sounds like we're getting close to wrapping up. I'm going to put up an impromptu question here, just for Mika, if nothing else, because she wants to see this. And also, I think people will be wondering, you've had a bunch of hero changes here. A lot more heroes getting played compared to before. I've seen even more Soldier, more McCree with the fall changes, though not as much as you might think. New Symmetra. When is someone going to pull out a gimmick strategy with it? Why have we not seen her just yet?
I have had suggestions. I have made suggestions. I have made very well-drawn diagrams about things that could be run with her. The issue is the comps she enables at the moment are not strong. So you'll probably see it if it returns to a more sniper-heavy meta. You'll probably see a lot more of her being able to reposition, especially shield tanks, on locations they should not be able to get to. I think is very strong. But given that the meta is like a mixture of being either insanely quick or like really brawly and mobile, she's just hard to work in. I do have things I want to do with her, but my teammates have not been as open-minded.
I can imagine
about
Elle
her as a hero.
screaming in VOD review sessions. This is why we need a Symmetra. For fuck's sake, guys. Look
Just
how
run
immobile
it!
we were.
A fun tidbit, the way a lot of teams started playing No Mercy is because in one of our scrims, I got tilted because I was just getting dove over and over by Gladiator's Legion. And I went, alarm, fuck it, I'm going Ana, you're going Zen, and we're just going to 2v2 their flankers. And we actually had reasonable success doing that, and then Gladiators countered by going Lucio Ana, and then suddenly in like 2 days, all of the Contenders teams in playoffs were no longer playing Mercy, we're just playing like Lucio Ana, no more Zens, super quick strategies. So I kind of want to give my tilt credit for for spawning the Ana play, which I've been
And your
pretty happy
tilt
with so
then
far.
Patient
could
zero right
spawn-
here, ladies and gentlemen. That's
Could
what we're
spawn
talking about.
Symmetra
spawn
in
Symmetra.
semifinals. Don't rule it out for tomorrow. Symmetra strats, maybe.
But also, don't hold your breath, because you will die before you see Symmetra played at a pro
What
level.
he's saying is that if Elk magically goes to Symmetra, know that Elk is tilting, and now is his breaking point. It's like, we're gonna do this, guys. We're not gonna go out without running Symmetra. And then you finally die and be like, well, Fusion have been swept out, but Elk got his wish.
There should really be betting sites actually that are running on like when will we see the first Symmetra, and then I'd love if there's some like mad drama scandal where they fixed it and someone runs Symmetra in some tournament and suddenly all of these GMs are getting payouts at the end.
Josh, I'm looking at you as I say this. You're flying too close to the sun here. We should shift the conversation.
No, that would be great. I want to see some cricket scandals where people are fixing matches, playing Symmetra all over the place. All right, that does it for Contenders North America. And good luck to Elk, and good luck to ZP as well, casting what is an absolute mad patch at the moment.
It's fun. It's real fun.